Welcome to Los Angeles Real. Wouldn't be Los Angeles if I wasn't stuck in traffic. Talking to you from my steering wheel cam. Today's episode, we have Ryan Pyle, who circumnavigated China with his brother, Colin. He's got about 1 million things going on. I'm going to let him tell you all about it in the episode. I want to remind you to check out our website, www.losangelesreal.net. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. I'm going to focus on driving. It'd be so funny if I got into an accident and documented it. I would definitely use it as the intro. But enjoy the episode, and we'll see you soon. Live the dream.
Welcome to Los Angeles Real. My name is Thomas Faustine Husking.
Hello, my name is Christian Monzone.
And today we're joined by Ryan Pyle.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Dude, we are stoked for you to be here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for stopping by today. On your way to CNN tomorrow. I just think that that's the coolest thing ever.
It's really awesome.
It is really cool. We're like your warm-up.
I don't know, fantastic. It's great to be in LA, and it's great to be here. So I'm excited about this format, and you guys are brilliant.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know Ryan Pyle, him and his brother Colin did a 10,000 mile plus, it was 10,091 to be specific, mile ride around China.
Yep.
That set a Guinness World Record.
It is.
Where do you have that plaque? Did you put that right in your
They gave us 2 plaques, and Colin has one at his home, and I have one at my home. So
Excellent, man.
I only shine it twice a day, so
That's
I try
good.
not to. No, it's great.
Cool, man.
Can you, for those that don't know, can you give everyone a little bit of background as to, I think through Colin's interview, people kind of got how you conceived of the trip, but let's go back a little bit further. How did you even start? You've been in China for 10 years?
Yeah, a little bit more, actually.
A little bit
since
more than
2001.
So what brought you to China, and just sort of take us through that?
Okay. Well, I think, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and went to the University of Toronto and played basketball there, actually, Division I basketball in Canada, which is not that awesome, but
sounds awesome.
It was cool. Made a lot of friends, and yeah, so there I am. I'm in second year University of Toronto, and I'm trying to figure out my schedule for the year, and there's this Chinese history and politics class, Introduction to, and I'm thinking, yeah, I could take that class. It's Thursday, and then I get my Friday off. And literally, that's what I did. I took the Chinese history and politics class. I got my Fridays off, and it was the class just really opened up my eyes to what China was. And it was a country that I didn't have any kind of interaction or introduction to at all. It's not like today, in the late 90s, people weren't talking about China every day. And today, now it's in the news pretty much every day. So,
right.
I started reading the books, and I started, interacting with the other classmates, and I started getting really interested in about China. And then year 3 and year 4, I took more classes. And then I decided, I got to go see China for myself. So when I graduated university, I did a 90-day backpacking trip. I had the backpacker, the big backpack, and it was all green and excited. I had the money belt underneath my pants with the passport,
Right.
And I was ready to go. And yeah, I did. I spent 90 days kind of traveling by bus and by train around China. I didn't speak any Chinese. I didn't have any friends. Did it all by myself, and really enjoyed the solitude, and really enjoyed I had to interact with people. I had to find a way to kind of problem solve, and I really enjoyed that way of traveling. And I really felt like China was providing me with the kinds of challenges that I enjoyed solving.
Had you ever done anything that audacious before? I mean, what compelled you to decide to do that on your own, for instance?
Yeah. I mean, I think I had never done anything that interesting before. I'd done the ski holidays with the family, but
Right.
never really got out and did something like that on my own. And I think I wanted to spend some time by myself. And after my university career, my basketball career was finished, because I didn't get a chance to follow up Steve Nash and play in the NBA or anything like that. He was a big hero at the time.
Were you a guard?
I was guard, yeah. I was point guard, 6'2", and about 190 pounds back in the day. And my basketball career was over. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to I didn't know what was next. And I just thought that, a trip by myself would be nice. And I think a lot of people don't give themselves that breathing space. Because when you're on your own by yourself, you're constantly reflecting on who you are, what you've done, and what you want to be. And for 90 days, those kinds of questions kept popping up, mistakes I'd made, mistakes I didn't want to repeat, what I wanted to get out of my life. And here you are traveling through this gorgeous country, China, traveling through all these amazing landscapes, and these ideas are constantly in your head, and you're giving yourself a time to process them. And then when I got back to Canada, I knew I wanted to live in China, and I just moved to Shanghai.
Were you married?
No, not at the time.
At the time? No,
not at the time.
Okay.
I was a free man. I didn't, I was totally free. I didn't have any property. I didn't have any debts. I didn't have anything. I just was, I had, I think I had $2,000 in my bank account, which was more than most graduates have when they finish university. Most people finish with debt. I was very lucky. I got some good jobs in university. My parents helped me out. And it was that freedom that allowed me to then try something that was a little bit off the wall, which was
so
moving
wow.
to China.
Wow.
Yeah.
I also like the way that you say long O's process.
There you go.
I didn't realize that was part of, your vernacular. That's interesting.
I try to keep my Canadianisms to a minimum.
No way, dude. You say I want a boots, and I want stories, and I want processes. How long after you knew that you wanted to go to Shanghai? Can I say Shanghai since I've been there, or do I have to say Shanghai?
Yeah, you could say Shanghai if you'd like.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always feel like it's a little bit, presumptuous. It has a little pretense when a foreigner says Shanghai.
Is that the proper way to say it?
It's a little bit. It's like a little bit using the Chinese tones. Shanghai. So,
right.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely fluent and can.
No.
You're
so
not?
no, I'm
Really?
like an upper intermediate level speaker. So I
Of Mandarin, not
of
Cantonese.
Mandarin, not Cantonese.
Okay.
Yeah, and I speak decent English.
You
But
speak incredible.
French?
there you go. A little bit of French. Grew up in Canada, and you have to learn French when you grow up in Canada.
Yeah.
It's an official language. But yeah, I studied a lot of Chinese early on, and then kind of got to a very comfortable point, and then stopped.
Right.
And got to the point where I could do 90% of my daily activities without needing any assistance, and haven't really spent a whole lot of time doing that. But I have enough now to do the productions and to travel around and kind of have small chit chat with people along the way.
And you don't necessarily need a liaison to get into the more remote areas. I mean, does everyone pretty much understand Mandarin, or?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, no. So the more kind of remote parts of China you get to, people either A, don't speak Mandarin, or B, kind of speak a version of Mandarin that is kind of entrenched in their own local dialect. And understanding them and them understanding you is quite difficult. So, people say, oh, everyone in China speaks Mandarin. Well, they don't.
Right.
The television is Mandarin, the radio is Mandarin, most of the education is Mandarin, but there are still kind of pockets that that struggle with kind of the language. And, there's parts of Tibet and parts of Xinjiang, which is the northwest bit, where people don't really speak too much Mandarin.
Now, in Shanghai, it's Shanghainese, which is totally different. Right?
Yeah, Shanghainese is horrible. Sorry to all the Shanghainese people out there.
How
Very
dare you.
lovely people. My wife's from Shanghai, but the language is hard and doesn't sound at all like Mandarin.
Well, so I mean, I would love if somebody in Shanghai saw our show.
Yeah.
But proper apology, I'm sure they accept it.
Yeah, Yuan, if you're watching, we love you.
So you've decided that you're going to live in China, right?
Yes.
What inspired this original trek? Because he's done the India ride as well.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I
I
want
knew
you.
that.
I didn't know that. He dropped it on me as soon as he came in. It was one of my first questions. Like, did you do India yet?
I knocked on the door and I was like, "Hey,
By the way."
I already did India." And he's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Ryan. I'm here for the interview." Yeah, I got that in early.
Yeah. No. Tell us what inspired this idea. I mean, you're obviously wild at heart, and you're capable of taking care of yourself in nature and whatnot. But
Right.
what inspired this original trek?
And this won't be linear because we're gonna jump back and forth.
No worries.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I think obviously I spent a lot of time in China as a professional photographer,
Right.
working for the New York Times and Time Newsweek and Fortune, and I started to feel real limitations with that method or medium of storytelling, and that coincided with the downfall of publishing. And it should be no surprise to anyone who's listening that newspapers and magazines are in a tough place.
Yeah.
And they're getting smaller. I think Newsweek was purchased by something called the Daily Beast. I believe that's a website. So, these historically powerful magazines that used to really shape opinion are now no longer kind of circulated. So I was starting to feel like this was a real limitation, and I felt like I had a lot of stories about China specifically that I wanted to still tell. And if I couldn't use photography and I couldn't reach an audience, then I needed to find a different medium. So I thought television would be interesting. And then this was kind of percolating in my brain. And then I traveled to New York in 2010. Colin came down from Toronto to meet with some of his finance contacts. And I remember we were sitting in Central Park. I was eating a Subway sandwich and having a Snapple, and he was doing the same. And it was a beautiful sunny day. It was March. And I just said, you know what? I got to take this to a new level. I got to do something different. I want to be a storyteller, but I think I want to try to make television or a documentary film or something. And then he dropped the bomb. He's like, well, you know what? I just sold my company to this other company, and he had to work there for a few years and afterwards contractually. And when he was in New York, that was the end of that contractual period. And he says, I'm going to resign and from the company and sell my house and take a gap year. So the two of us are sitting in New York City, Central Park, the city of dreams, not the city of angels, but the city of dreams where things happen. You get inspired when you go to New York. We're sitting there. We decided, let's do it. Let's try to do something together. So he said, okay, I'm going to sell my house, quit my job, sell my car, and then convince my wife, and then I'll come to China and we'll do something. We didn't know what, though. So we thought, okay, should we climb a mountain? Should we go hiking in Tibet or what? And then we started coming along with more ideas. We both like riding motorcycles. Okay, let's take a motorcycle trip. So we'll do a 1 week motorcycle trip. Okay, great. But that's not ambitious enough. And what if we did something a little bit tougher? And then I was like, back and forth half hour. Okay, we're going to ride motorcycles all the way around China. Okay, how do we do that? So then from Central Park, we went to Central Park South and 5th, went downstairs into the Apple store, got onto one of their computers, brought up the map software, and started saying, okay, Shanghai, Beijing, Xinjiang, okay, down to Tibet, okay, back to Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and then back to Shanghai. Okay, 20,000 kilometers. Okay, we can do that. And we like looking in and using the satellite function. There's a road there. We can do it. Like
That's crazy.
We can do this. And then so we left New York, riding high.
Yeah.
Life-changing decisions were happening, right? And then, but of course, Colin has a wife and I have a wife and I have 2 children as well. So by no means was this a done deal. So we both had to go home and kind of spend the next 2 months convincing our families that this was a good idea.
Oh my God.
And that's hard. And I always tell this story that, my wife is a real pragmatist. So I get home and she's like, oh, honey, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm great. She's like, oh, how was New York? I was like, oh, it was good. And she's like, oh, how was your time with Colin? It was good. She's like, anything else happened? I'm like, well, honey, I want to ride a motorcycle around China with Colin. And she goes, okay. Really dry face. And she's like, what's the longest motorcycle trip you've ever been on? And I said, 2 days. 300 miles, 2 days. And she's like, and how long would this trip be? And I said, probably about 12,000 miles, about 2 months, 60 days. And she goes, does that worry you at all? And I'm like, no, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And she goes, okay. And then she goes, is there anything else? And I was like, yeah, we're going to make a television show about it. Oh. And she goes, have you ever made a television show? And I said, no, I haven't, but I can see it.
That's awesome.
And I really think that we, Colin and I together can bring this home. And so she was really skeptical at first, as she usually is with these insane ideas. But I warmed her up, and Colin was basically doing the same thing in Toronto with his wife, as well as selling his house and selling his car. Wow. And kind of giving up his life. And then what we did was after that, we had this May 1st D-Day, where I would call him on May the 1st, and he would tell me what his wife said, and I would tell him what my wife said. So I called him up, and we're like, this was what? March, so it's a month and a half after we'd been in New York together. And I was like, what'd your wife say? He goes, you tell me first. And I'm like, no, you tell me. And then we both said at the same time, and it was a go. So then we started planning. We started trying to bring on corporate partners. We started trying to raise money for it. We talked to broadcasters. Everyone said no to us. Everyone. All the broadcasters had no interest.
How did you reach out to them? Did you have a publicist or an agent or some sort of liaison?
No, you just pick up the phone, man. I mean, that's the thing. So, you do some Google searches, you try to find the office, you pick up the phone call, you try to find out who's in charge of production, who's in charge of generating new content, who's in charge of, all the people's jobs who you think would come up with the idea that, hey, riding a motorcycle around China will be A, topical, because China's in the news every day. Yeah. B, it would be hard. So you have personal challenge, perseverance, personal growth, endurance, physical and mental, and then it's the question of, can these guys actually make a show? And that's where I was like, okay, why don't you guys send a crew with us? And of course, I had no idea how television is made, and broadcasters don't really make any television. They outsource it all to production companies who manage it, and then it all comes back to them nicely, ready to go to be put on television. So, and then I started and then they, all the broadcasters said no. And then when the broadcasters say no, all the corporate partners will say no, because they're not going to invest in you unless they know they're going to get that return on their marketing dollars, and they're going to be on a big international broadcaster. So they all said no. And then I reached out to some production companies, and they all said no. And then Colin and I said, well, we got our wives to agree to this, so we're not letting this go, because this is this is a key moment, right? Yeah. Are we gonna, if we let this go, everything else we do in our lives will always remember this moment. And if we want to do something again in the future, we'll always say we could back out because we backed out of China, and that's not cool. So we put up some cash and of our own, and we found some people to help us do this, and we managed to start our adventure. And we started in Shanghai from my home, and then headed north into northeastern China, visited the border of China and North Korea, and then from there we went all the way west to the border of China and Pakistan, and then down into Tibet. We went all the way to Mount Everest Base Camp, and then back towards Hong Kong and southeast China, and then back up to Shanghai. So it was 65 days.
How, what kind of, I mean, I know because I saw the clips, but I just expected you guys to be on these like Easy Rider hogs.
Yeah.
What, how did you choose the bikes that you were going to be traveling?
It's a great question. So, China can be quite restrictive for what you can import into the country. So we had two options. Did we use a local Chinese motorcycle company, of which there are many, or did we import a foreign bike?
At 100% tax?
On 100% luxury tax. So we looked at some of the Chinese motorcycles, and some of them were good quality, but the problem was the engine size. So a lot of people in China, they use motorcycles for inner city commuting. So they go from home to work. So it's like a 150cc or a 200cc max. And that wasn't going to get us through Tibet, 16,000 feet going up and down mountains. Like, that's not going to do it. So at the time, we decided that an international brand would be better, a foreign brand. And at the time, in 2010, there were only two brands available in China. So one was a Harley Davidson, and one was a BMW. And that lowrider Harley Davidson thing is great when you're cruising down Highway 66, Route 66, killing it, and you got tarmac, you got pavement. But I would say like a third of our journey, like a full 4,000 miles of it, was really off-road.
Oh, man.
And that's not Harley territory. I have nothing against Harley Davidson. It's a great brand. Yeah. And if I do a trip in the United States someday, I'd love to ride a Harley. But we thought that the BMW Adventure Series, the GS Series, would be best. And then we had the choice between the 800 GS and the 1200 GS, 800cc engine versus a 1200cc engine. And we went with the 800 because it was more of a mechanical bike. It was more kind of nuts and bolts, less computers.
Right.
The 1200 is very...
less to go wrong.
Yeah, less. The 1200 is very kind of computer electrical oriented. They have a computer suspension, computer gas. They have a drivetrain that's incredibly hard to fix if you break it, whereas the 800 has just a normal chain.
Right.
So we thought that the 800 would be an easier bike to fix on the road, because actually BMW back in the old days, they would sell you a bike in China but have no maintenance and no spare parts.
Wow.
And you did run into technical difficulties.
Of course. It doesn't matter if you're using a 150cc Chinese bike or an 800cc BMW. If you're going to put that thing through 12,000 miles in one straight stretch, you're going to have breakdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Vehicles are not made for that kind of endurance. And we basically did the equivalent of like the Dakar Rally without a support crew and without a mechanic. And of course we had issues.
When did the world record come into it? Were you guys aware of that before you even started?
No, it's a great question. So it's we weren't. We started off on our journey and we're cooking along, and by the time we finished it, we sent out this press release saying that these two idiot brothers from Canada had done this ridiculous journey around China.
Two idiot brothers.
There you go. Two idiot brothers. Don't die.
Genius innovators.
There you go. And then someone wrote back to us and said, I think you guys set a Guinness World Record. You guys should check on that. So we contacted Guinness and we said, we just finished this trip around China. Is there a record that we might have won? And they said, well, did you cross any borders? And we said no. And so you stayed in one country, and then they said, well, there's a chance for you guys to get a record for longest journey within one country without backtracking or overlapping. And that's what we ended up getting. So we had to, the due diligence was ridiculous. We had to send in like hotel bills and GPS waypoints.
Oh my God.
That makes me feel confident
Yeah.
though, that Guinness is really working hard to make sure that they're credible and legitimate.
They're
with the world
doing it. They're doing it.
records.
And, you know, signed affidavits from our whole crew about where we stayed and what stops we made and things like that. And hotel bills, gas receipts, everything that we had that could show that we were actually in certain places. And then we sent all that in, and 3 months later they kind of announced that we had won that record. And it's been a great branding, thing to have for us, because it was a real first. We were the first people to circumnavigate China by motorcycle. Lots of great riders in China, but they've all done smaller trips, and some people have done the exact same route, but in different segments. We were the first people to kind of do it all in one shot, and yeah, with the Guinness World Record as well. So
again, I'm sure it's just, dude, the audaciousness of this whole thing is just kind of mind blowing. You dummies said we're gonna make a TV show. We're gonna go all the way. I mean, with no business doing this kind of thing. So I'm sure you had experienced people going, these guys are out of their minds, and then you did it and did it well.
Thank you. So I think, all great ideas come from people telling you that you'll never get it done.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. On top of the fact that the way that you're being acknowledged now, BBC, CNN, the New York Times, I'm sure your old employer most definitely did a piece on you, and God knows what other publications are out there,
right,
and interviews you've been on. But the world record, all these great things that happened from this one inspired idea that came from you sitting on a park bench eating a Subway sandwich with your brother.
And a Snapple.
And a Snapple. Don't forget the Snapple.
What did it say under the cap?
I can't remember.
Did anyone
It's like, don't be a pussy.
When I was in China and for 10 days.
Okay.
And briefly got a little bit sick. Now, I got amoebic dysentery in Vietnam.
Okay.
That shit nearly killed me.
Yeah.
How did you guys do health-wise throughout the 66 days?
65 days.
65 days.
And we did really well, actually. So I live in China. I eat Chinese food on a regular basis, so I was fine.
Right.
But and Colin was a little bit new, and his stomach was a little bit unsettled for the first few days. Because you have to, when you're traveling by motorcycle, China, the places in between in China, not great food. The big cities, you can get great food, but the gas stations and the places you kind of have to stop and have lunch at, these are the kind of dodgier spots. So eventually we just stopped having lunch, as we would just eat breakfast where we started, and then have some Oreo cookies in the midday, and then finish off with a dinner if we could get to a hotel. And Colin actually didn't get sick, and neither did I. So we were healthy in that sense, and the only issues we did have were we had a few falls along the way, which kind of scared us and also reminded us of the kind of dangers that exist on these amazing journeys.
Yeah, I'm curious, was there any point besides these falls that were potentially heartbreaking in the sense that maybe you couldn't go forward anymore? I mean, did you psychologically feel at any point like, man, I can't, what am I doing?
Yeah,
let me just
what have we done?
Yeah, what are we doing?
Take the bikes, BMW. Yeah. F you for not sponsoring us, suckers, because you did go after sponsorship, right?
We did go after sponsorship, but when we couldn't get a broadcaster, it all kind of fell apart. So we just decided that, this one's on us, and we'll prove to everyone that we can do it. And then if we try to do it again in the future, people will wake up and get on board.
But yeah, you tell us about
the doubt.
The doubt, man, and the fear and
the fear and doubt.
I think the less you think, the better off you are. I really am a believer in that. I think that people overthink situations and think themselves out of great things. And I think, I just believe in my heart that if you really want to go out and do something, you just have to do it. And
great advice.
And people are just going to tell you no, and you can't do it, and you're not talented or whatever. And you just have to say, then I'm going to fail, but I'm going to fail my way, and just go. So we had a lot of self-doubt. We had self-doubt before the journey, goosebumps, are we really going to do this? And then when we were on the journey, it was just hard. Colin got heat stroke on the first day. We did about 300 miles. First day. And to this moment, Colin still acknowledges day one as being the toughest day of the journey.
Wow.
Because it was like 110 degrees Celsius. We got stuck in traffic. It was like a 14-hour day. Did 300 miles. He got sick and was just dying in his helmet. We wore all of our protective gear. We had the boots, we had the pants with the pads, we had the jackets with the pads, we had helmets, gloves, because you're going to fall off your motorcycle. Like that's, anyone out there who rides a motorcycle knows you're going to go down someday at some time. Right. So you just wear the stuff and you pray to God that there's, you're
it's like
safe.
Something crazy like 80% of riders go down and 40% of those 80 are fatal.
Yes, I mean sometimes.
Whoa, is that true?
That's
a fucked up.
I used to. Well, I ride. I just don't have a bike anymore.
Yeah,
I sold it. I didn't want to be a 40%er.
There you go. It's safer. So you're gonna hit the deck at some stage. So you wear all the stuff, but then when it's 100 degrees outside, you're melting, and then then you're not stopping for water enough, and it just builds up, and you just kind of start melting in your suit, which happened to Colin the first few days. But man, and it happened to me as well. I was but it didn't faze me as much because I live in Shanghai, which is quite a hot climate.
It's hot there.
Yeah, it is hot. And then the doubt. We got stopped by the police. We got stopped by the military. We got caught in a sandstorm. We had the big breakdown in Tibet. There was altitude sickness. But Colin and I really believe that, if neither of us were going to end up in the hospital, we carry on. And every day we try to ride. So if it's raining out, we wake up in the morning. Even if we do 50 miles, we ride. We always have to keep this momentum, because you can't let that momentum keeps you going.
Oh, absolutely.
If you take a day off or say, "Oh, I'm tired today, we're not going to go," it's not just you; it's the team. This was really a team sport. It was Colin and I plus our cameraman Chad Ingram, another Canadian, brilliant videographer, and then we had a driver in various sections, different driver in various sections who was local to that part of China. Yeah. So it was the four of us. So we had to keep the momentum up. We had to keep the energy up. And we couldn't just say, "Oh, I don't want to go today," because Colin and I were leading this adventure.
So how scientific was it in terms of
not at all?
At all? Okay, should I just avoid that?
No.
Because there's a school of people who they do these treks, long treks, the Pacific, the continental divide, the Pacific crest,
right,
where they have to mail stuff to themselves at different points.
Yep.
And it becomes very scientific to the point where, okay, how many calories am I going to take in today? How many calories am I expending? Yep. And it's very, it's specific.
What you're saying is you didn't do that.
No, you're a bodybuilder, you're a fit guy. You're always, no, we had no idea. But this is the thing, you're in China, right? So every kind of couple hundred kilometers or miles, there's always a gas station where you can get some Oreo cookies and a fizzy drink. That's enough sugar. That's enough sugar to get you through the day.
Sure.
And there wasn't any. And at night we would just eat whatever we could get our hands on because we were just starving most days. Colin and I both lost about 20 pounds on the journey.
You got toughened up.
Eating Oreo cookies, brother.
Oreo cookies.
Right.
It's
everyone listen to that shit.
It's amazing though, because Colin plays. Colin keeps himself quite fit. I try to keep myself quite fit. But riding a motorcycle for 60 days, 65 days, your legs disappear.
Really?
Like all that
atrophy.
That muscle that you've built up over the gym, and we did a lot of gym workouts before we went to try to build ourselves up because we knew that this trip was going to strip our bodies down. Yeah, and your legs just take a beating.
It's not like riding a horse where you get to grip and you build that grip strength.
No, not at all. It's not the Suzanne Summers
the thigh master of travel
where you're just squeezing onto that gas tank. No, it's a lot of times you just sit and chilling, and then through Tibet, you had to stand on the pegs, and that was a little bit more physical. But for huge stretches of the trip, you're just kind of sitting there watching the beauty go by, and your body takes a beating.
How about your back, man?
Back was tough in some days. Colin suffered a bit more with the back than I did, partially because of a fall he had as well, where he took a bit of a beating. But yeah, you get strange aches and pains, man. Because you're using a lot of muscles you would never use. Just think about your left foot for all the riders out there, and your left hand. You're constantly clutching and going up and down with your left ankle and right wrist or left wrist, and after like day one, you're just sore.
Soreness in weird places.
And that just happened kind of throughout the whole trip. It was pretty intense.
Let's take it back just a little bit. when you decided to move, and you said I'm gonna set up shop in Shanghai,
Mm-hmm.
how did you know that you were gonna be able to support yourself and just make that move? Were you already an established photographer at that point?
No, so I basically decided based on my 90-day trip around China that I really wanted to learn more about China and try to tell people in the Western world stories about China.
Yeah.
And I did that actually when I was doing my trip. I would write these like email blogs, and this was 2001, you know. So I would make a diary, and then every time I found an internet cafe, which was maybe once a week, I would write this big diary about like what I did, what I saw, and then send that back to family and friends. And you know, it was like a list of 100 people, and that kind of got me excited. I was always thinking about what am I seeing, what am I doing, who am I talking to, how much does that cost, how can I take that information and put it in my blog or whatever in my next email update. And then I thought, wow, I want to try to do this for a living. This is great, right? I'm traveling, I'm experiencing, I'm connecting with people, and then I'm sharing what I see. So when I eventually moved back to China permanently, I had never really picked up a camera.
Wow.
Yeah. So I bought a camera. Actually, I think my dad bought me one for my birthday. Bought me a Canon, and I just kind of brought it with me to China and started figuring out how to use it. And I taught English part-time to kind of pay the bills while I was getting my feet, you know, under me. And I worked for a lot of local English newspapers and magazines in Shanghai. There are quite a few because there's a lot of foreigners that live there. And I was doing like local events and some local stories, travel stories. And then I started working for airline magazines. So all the, you know, that travel magazines you see in the airlines in the seat back pocket. So I was doing those. And then I got a break kind of late 2004 where I started working for the New York Times, and then that led into all the other magazines internationally as well, like Der Spiegel in Germany and Sunday Times Magazine in the UK and things like that. And that's kind of how it got going. But when I first moved to China, I had no idea. And my dad openly admits that he thought I'd be back in 6 months because I had $2,000 in my bank account.
Right. He's like, he's screwed.
Yeah, he's like that, you know. Even at $500 a month, he's going to be back in 4 or 5 months. So he thought I wouldn't necessarily make it. He won't admit to that now, but at the time he was a bit skeptical. He's like, "Well, I'll let him go have some fun."
Dad, if you're listening, we know about you.
We know about you.
So you took this 90-day trek. It inspired what you would be doing for how many years now? Photography.
Photography kind of from 2002 until, you know, really 2010 or 2011 when I kind of stopped doing mainly the editorial assignments. Yeah.
So tell us what your first motorcycle trip, what did that inspire?
It inspired a lot of doubt.
Yeah, more doubt.
Yeah,
more doubt.
So it's so Colin and I had only ridden motorcycles around Toronto. Before I had left to China. So I left for China when I was 22 years old, and I played basketball all through university, so I never got anywhere near a motorcycle because they just wouldn't allow it. But when I first got my driver's license and my motorcycle license, I was like 17, 18. A friend of mine had a bike, and sometimes he would go up to his cottage for a week and lend me his bike. And it was like an old Kawasaki 250cc Ninja.
Oh,
and it was and it was a little pocket rocket, and I would drive it around, and it was kind of fun. Yeah.
250cc, man.
Well, when you're little, it was
Dude, when you're 17, I bet that shit
17,
badass.
okay, all right.
Come on.
But
Absolutely.
you probably look
Except
a
for your
little
6'2",
strange because
so-
you're 6'2".
I was a badass. My knees were dragging along.
I
the
got
ground.
I got my license on a 250, and I was like, oh god.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
So I was riding that around, and then I went to university, didn't ride at all. Came to China, and then I started to realize that actually the best parts of China are explored by motorcycle. So I would often fly to a city and then take a bus out to some remote part of China and then stay in a little local guest house. And then I was thinking to myself, like, how am I going to get out and see the countryside? How am I going to see the villages? How am I going to get off the main road? And the motorcycle was the key. And when I was in China doing these photography, you know, jobs, and I would constantly just rent motorcycles from local farmers in the villages that I would visit. And then I would leave them my passport and some money. And, you know, we'd cut a deal, and then I told him I'd come back and sleep at his house later and have dinner, and I would take the bike out the whole day, and then after day one I was good, and then I'd be there for a week, and every day I would take the bike out, and then I left it with a full, you know, tank of gas and gave him some money, and he was like, wow, this is awesome. But it was such a great way to explore the country. And then that was when it really started hitting me, like 2005, 2006. Like, I really want to see more of this country by motorcycle. And then And then I did a trip for 2 days, which was of 300 miles, which I told my wife about, which was I went from Shanghai to Huangshan, which is this famous yellow mountain kind of scenic park southwest of Shanghai. And I rode out there one day and then rode back the next day. And it was kind of it was a 3-day trip. I went out there, stayed there one day, and then came back. And that was really hard. And it rained on me all the way there and all the way back. And you're riding in China. It's a little bit dangerous. There's a lot of trucks and roads, and it's raining. And I'd never ridden in the rain really before. So
Scary.
yeah, it was scary. And by then I'd already committed with Colin to doing the Middle Kingdom ride through China. And I was really nervous because I was like, wow, this is actually really dangerous and really hard.
Yeah.
And riding in the rain's not happy. And you know, that's the thing about these kinds of trips is every day you have to move, rain or shine. And I really didn't like riding in the rain. I didn't like the feel of slipping around and having to use your finger to wipe your windshield. So it was really tough. So after that trip, I was really low because I was like, man, this is, I don't know if I've really kind of calculated all the risks that are involved. But then, you know what? I just said, fuck it. I'm just overthinking this. You know, I did 200 miles in one day in the rain. All I have to do is do that for 60 days and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I've done it. And we went on.
We've been talking about that a lot lately. Like, just getting started is the hardest thing in the world. Pushing through that inertia that's trying to, keep us all from doing what we're meant to do or what we would like to do.
Right.
Is the most difficult thing, seemingly. But then you take that first step and you're like, oh shit, like it really wasn't that bad to get started. It's just seeing it through.
Right.
That becomes then the next obstacle, and that's where your tenacity comes in.
I think so. I think it allows you to define yourself. I mean, if you constantly listen to what other people think you should be doing, you never really come into your own. And I think that that's something that, a lot of people learn at different ages in their lives.
So you finish, and perhaps was it a little bit anticlimactic in that you're done and you're like, man, I can't believe we have to be done now.
There's a story behind this, from my smile. So we finished this amazing trip, and we're like lucky to be alive, and we've got these big fucking
old
beards, and there's bugs in them, and there's food in them.
Bugs.
And we get back to Shanghai, and I get to reunite with my family, which is amazing. And I was, I had this great euphoria, like we did this amazing trip. Colin flies back to the U.S. to meet with his wife, and then it dawns on me that I don't have to do anything, tomorrow or the next day or the next day.
Oh no!
And what about the footage? I mean, how much footage did you guys?
Well, I said I was going to take like 2 weeks before I even started looking at the footage because it was just too close. But for those 2 weeks, I was really depressed.
Yeah.
I had difficulty getting out of bed. Like I'm really a taskmaster. I'm really driven by tasks. Every morning I wake up and I have a list of like 10 things I want to get done today. And that was very much what the Middle Kingdom ride was. It was like, okay, today we're going to ride 200 miles. We're going to visit this scenic spot and we're going to end up at this town and stay in this hotel. And that was kind of what we wanted to do. And of course, every day, was a shitstorm. Like it was bad weather. We never made it. We got in an accident or whatever. But every morning we tried to start out with these principles and in mind. And then all of a sudden I had really nothing to do. And, I was helping my kids get to school, and then my kids would come home and I'd do their homework with them. But I wasn't, riding through the deserts of Western Tibet,
Right.
And it was a real difficult readjustment.
Okay. Yeah, they have that great scene, the movie Hurt Locker.
Yeah.
Where he's in the aisles looking at all the cereal boxes.
Yeah.
And there's this guy who's used to being in the trenches and striving to protect his country and the people around him, and he's fallen into this thing. It's kind of the same thing, you have to fall back into the routine of what's socially accepted.
Exactly, and he had a real purpose. I mean, Jeremy Renner is the actor, the great character created, great story. And he had no purpose being back.
So how did you pull yourself out of that depression?
Well, it was selling the Middle Kingdom ride. So
that's the name of the documentary for everybody watching.
Yeah, the Middle Kingdom ride. So the Middle Kingdom ride is what we called our China motorcycle adventure, and the Middle Kingdom ride is derived from a historical term which China used to be known by. So everyone used to call China the Middle Kingdom. Back in like the 16, 17, 1800s. And in China, actually the name for China is Zhongguo, which means like middle country or middle kingdom. So that's kind of where we got that from. We didn't want to just call it the China ride.
Can we watch the Middle Kingdom ride anywhere? Is it online somewhere? Is it on Netflix?
Well, this is the thing. So the Middle Kingdom ride is aired in 100 countries all around the world, except the United States and Canada. So we're on Travel Channel internationally, and it's being played in Asia and Australia, New Zealand, the UK, all through Europe. But we haven't secured a broadcaster in the United States yet, or in Canada.
Yeah, just foreign market.
And it's been really hard, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here in LA. To promote the Middle Kingdom ride, to promote what we've done, to promote that it's actually rating very well overseas, and to kind of get people to turn their eye to the fact that this might be a show that people in the United States also want to watch.
So it's more of a series as opposed to the documentary. It's not like an hour and 20-minute doc.
No, it's a 6 episodes, so it's 6 30-minute episodes.
6 30-minute episodes.
And that takes us through the whole kind of circumnavigation of China.
Did you look at Anthony Bourdain and other travel shows prior to saying, okay, we're going to need X amount of cameras to strap to us? We really like the sequence when they go in and do this with the villagers. Like, how did you prep for what was essentially your first foray into making a television show?
That was really hard. So I think I watched a lot of adventure travel shows. There was a great television series a few years ago with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman where they rode motorcycles around the world, long way around, and then they did their long way down. And we liked aspects of that. Some bits we liked, some bits we didn't like, and we tried to, we thought, okay, if we just focus on one country, on our trip, we can do some things a little bit different and make it a little easier on ourselves, because one of the big issues for them was crossing borders and how much difficulty that was. And we said, okay, we'll just do one country. Let's just do China. And then then I had to really sit down, because I really knew the country, and I really had to sit down and I really wanted, what do I want to show people about China? Because this is going to be an internationally broadcasted television show. And as we sorted out what route we wanted to take, we had to make sure there were enough stops along the way that would pull in the audience. Like, okay, these guys just riding motorcycles isn't enough. Like, they have to interact with people, they have to see things, right? And what are we going to see? What are we going to do? And I managed, because I knew the country really well, and I'd been to pretty much all the places that we stopped at. Mm-hmm. I knew that these would be kind of great ways of pulling in the audience.
Did you guys stop at the Kentucky Fried Chicken at the base of the Terracotta Warriors in Xi'an?
We didn't. Actually, we did. See, this is the thing. We didn't even go to Xi'an. So we didn't even go to the Terracotta Warriors, because we really wanted... See, this is another thing. We really had this idea of showing people a side of China they hadn't seen before. And, there's great television shows about the Terracotta Warriors. There's great television shows about the Great Wall and Forbidden City. We really wanted to show people a part of China they hadn't seen before. Yeah. Like, what's it like on the road, mile by mile?
And not just that, but the task of finding the conflict. I mean, sure, it's man versus nature. Yep. You guys in the elements, riding motorcycles.
And Mother Nature was a bitch.
Yeah, right. Right. She stuck it to you guys.
So, I mean, but that in and of itself wasn't enough conflict.
Right.
Right? I mean, you guys have other obstacles. Did you and Colin ever kind of...
Oh, great question.
Butt heads? No. I mean, I think a lot of people were waiting for that.
Yeah.
But it never happened. I think, Colin and I are kind of built from the same DNA, where we work hard and we don't bitch when things get tough. And I think we both played a lot of team sports when we were kids, so we knew that complaining wasn't going to help anything. You just put your head down and do it. Right. It's like running suicides in basketball practice. Having one guy out of 14 complain, like, I don't want to do this. Like, shut up, you pussy, fucking run, right? Yeah. And that's what it was like every day. Oh, my back hurts. I'm like, really? Like,
that's good.
Sort it out. So we actually didn't have one argument on the whole trip. And
that's insane.
It was insane. And you know what? We were just too tired. we were too tired.
That's just what it was.
We were too tired to argue, and we talked about everything, about how we were going to do things, and we just agreed. Like, based on our energy level, based on our health, based on the distances that we had to cover, we just were spot on. About managing our risk on a daily basis, and that's a great testament to our friendship.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you
guys are really big white guys in a country where you probably stick out everywhere you go.
Yep.
Did you feel... I personally felt like I had some shadowy characters watching me when it's probably not true, but like when I was in the Forbidden City, I felt like I was warned ahead of time, hey, there are going to be guys making sure you're not trying to disseminate flyers or something to the people and that are culturally disruptive. How tight was the presence on you guys? Did people follow you on your trip? I mean,
No, I mean, I think China has a bad reputation for that, and I think that traveling by road in China is a great way to avoid all of that. I think China is just a brilliant destination for road travel.
Right.
You know, whether it's by car or by motorcycle, and you really do get to get out from all of that. And you know, you do have people in tourist sites making sure that people behave properly and things like that, and are orderly.
Yeah.
But when you're out on the open road, you know, there's no one watching you, and you just go and you enjoy. Now, in saying that, we did try to circumnavigate China in the border areas. So we purposely wanted to stay along the international borders. So we went up the border of North Korea, we went across the border of Mongolia, we went along the border of Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan and Pakistan, and then India, and then Nepal. So when you enter these border areas of China, you're going to come into border military patrol people.
Yes.
And that was more than we had expected. So we kind of engaged with these people on a very regular basis, and we were surprised at how much, but actually when you think about it, these are international borders. I mean, if we were riding a motorcycle between the United States and Mexico, you would probably run into a lot of border patrol people.
Right.
It's just not a part of it's just not something that you come into contact with on a regular basis. And but what really surprised Colin is that when some of these people told us to turn around and go the other way, we were actually able to negotiate with them and continue on our path. And Colin was just like, wow, if you were to do that in the United States, like they'd throw you in jail in 5 seconds. Like you in the United States, you listen. Yeah. And when someone tells you to do something, you do it, especially if they're military or police or something like that. But in China, there's a little bit of a gray area where you can work your way around, and you know, and people knew it's like, oh, they're just big bikes, and they're these guys, they're just riding their bikes, and they're cool bikes, so we might as well just kind of let them go.
What about the presence of the cameras? I mean, the fact that you guys are capturing.
Yeah.
Did you take the helmet cams off when
absolutely,
you were pulling up to?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Absolutely, yeah. So that happened to us once. We pulled up on a checkpoint where we had to show our passports and our visas and stuff like that, and we had our helmet cams on, and that really freaked them out. They didn't confiscate anything, but
that's pretty nice of them.
That was nice of them, but that's definitely a danger issue, because you wouldn't do that anywhere else in the world, and you wouldn't expect them to take it any different. So after that first time, we were very careful about pulling off the helmet cameras and really not filming in those areas, because they're military areas.
You have seen intimately China explode in the last 13 years or so that you've been there.
I've been covering it.
You've been covering it, right?
Yeah.
And aren't you working on a coffee table book of black and white photos of a
Not
certain
black and
region?
white.
Yeah, no, I am.
Is it black and white?
It's all black and white. So
no, the pictures
research.
the images that you showed me from Sacred Mountain.
It's a different book,
which
Christian.
is
different.
Of course
book,
it is,
different
because this
project.
guy is a creative genius right here, and he's doing a plethora of different projects.
Let me finish my question.
Okay.
I just want to know, at the end of the day, everything that you've witnessed, the huge explosion and growth, the massive migration into the urban areas, are you hopeful, or what's your current take on China, the way that it's moving forward?
Okay, so yes, I am working on a big kind of coffee table book about Xinjiang, which is that Muslim northwestern part of China,
Right.
and it is all black and white. I love working in film. I love working in Kodak film and with rangefinder cameras and stuff like that. And it's actually a project that I started working on in 2005, and I'd been going back to the region kind of 3-4 times a year, documenting change, documenting culture, and it should be out hopefully by the end of this year.
Cool.
And yeah, it's very exciting, and it's a great.
What's it called?
It's going to be called Chinese Turkestan. So this area that kind of engulfs Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and part of China used to be known as Turkestan, and this is the Chinese part of Turkestan. So we're going to call it Chinese Turkestan, and yeah, with regards to the explosion and the changes, I'm quite positive about where China's heading. I mean, look, industrial revolution is messy,
Yeah.
and it's not for children. A lot of people lose out, and there's no way of making everyone whole, and it's hard. And the fact that so many people are being uprooted, and all this change is happening, and highways are being built, and airports are being built, this is what the government there determines necessary for the country to grow and develop, and the growth and development in the last 30 years has been breathtaking. Corruption is a big issue there. Maybe they could be nicer about some things. But they have managed their economy really well, to the point where they've staved off global recession for the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of our own mismanagement, Europe and the United States specifically. So you can it's an amazing love-hate relationship with China. I mean, China wants to be a real player on the world stage, and that means they're going to have to face media scrutiny, against their policies, of which there's a lot of. The thing that bothers me is because I live in China and because I travel around the country so often, that I obviously have an incredibly different interpretation of what's happening in the country than most of what you get on the news stations. I feel like it's just what you get a lot of on television and in newspapers is just kind of skimming the surface.
I felt the same way when I lived in Korea.
Yeah.
It was the exact same way.
Yeah, it's filtered. I mean, where are we watching news?
Yeah.
We're watching it here. We're going to listen to what they tell us. It's this small window.
Exactly.
There's still a huge picture around that window.
Where can we turn to for legitimate Chinese news? What's a good source?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the mainstays, like the New York Times is a great one, and the Financial Times out of the UK is a great resource as well. They've got a lot of long-term journalists on the ground who are, doing a lot of in-depth reporting. But then it's television. So it's like, what does China really look like?
Right.
And earlier this year in January, February, and March, Beijing had horrible pollution. And it was just replayed again and again and again on the television news networks. And now there's people that I run into on a daily basis who think that all of China looks like Beijing does during those bad pollution days with the sandstorms and all this kind of stuff. And they think that Shanghai looks like that. And they think that Western China looks like that. So they, my television shows, my books are really aimed at those people to say, Beijing has some bad weather. It has some pollution. It has sandstorms. It's not a great place, but the whole country doesn't look like that.
It's not the metropolitan area that they show you on the Olympics.
Yeah, China's much more complex and much there's a lot more diversity that exists there. And I think that, that was one of the real reasons why we wanted to make the Middle Kingdom ride. We wanted to do this ride around China to show people the diversity of the landscape, the diversity of the people, the diversity of the cultures. In one of our clips that's on our website, we visit a mosque in Western China where there's a lot of Muslim people who are praying for the end of the Ramadan. And they all visit the mosque. There's like 10,000 people in that square all praying. And
wow.
A lot of people don't know that China has, Central Asia's most important mosque, the Idka Mosque in central Kashgar. So we wanted to film that. We wanted to show that and hopefully give people a bit of a deeper appreciation of the kind of diversity that exists in China.
So I know that me personally, when I was there and would go through a market and see a large Muslim contingent, I would just be like, man, I'm such an ignoramus. I had no idea that China was so diverse, and I think you guys explained that really well. So then you went to fucking India and did the same thing.
Yeah, so Colin and I were feeling, well, let me get into this.
Crazy.
We hadn't actually sold the Middle Kingdom ride.
Okay.
When we started planning for India. So we really just decided we were going to double down. And
That you did.
like you always do.
As you should.
As you should. And we just said, what? India's another diverse, complex, fast-growing country. It would be wonderful to explore that. The Indian people are brilliant. Let's go and see India. And Colin, seemed up for it. And this time we were able to raise some financials from some corporate partners, a beverage company, Mountain Dew, and a computer company, Lenovo. Lenovo has this great campaign, like For Those Who Do, and they loved us because we just get out and do things.
Yeah, you do.
So it was good like that, and we used the Royal Enfield, which is a local Indian motorcycle.
Well, can I pause you real fast? Did
Yep.
you do the same thing as before, or had you at this point enlisted some professionals to reach out to these corporations for you?
No, Colin and I did all this kind of stuff.
I think that's so cool.
Yeah, of course it is, man.
If you can't
Pursuing his
call up
dreams.
someone at BMW for a motorcycle or Oakley for sunglasses or something like that, and you can't sell them yourself, then what good is a PR person?
I just
or
think the impression is that you would never get to talk to the people that are even making those decisions, but you found a way to do that.
It takes time, to weed through the people and get the yeses and the nos, and you really have to, grind at it.
Okay.
But then, you're fundraising for your trip, and we hadn't showed the MK ride on television yet, so we really didn't have anything to show people that this model worked. So, but we were really kind of, we really said we were going to do this, and you guys should back us, and we set a Guinness World Record for our first trip, and it's going to be on television soon. Just trust us.
Yeah.
But yeah, Colin and I just wanted to go for it, and we had this amazing, 54-day journey around India, which was such a different experience, because in China I was leading Colin. I knew the country, I knew the roads, I knew the places we were visiting. But in India, we were both seeing it for the first time, and that really just changed the whole dynamics of the trip and made it actually better, because we were both kind of awestruck by the same things on a daily basis.
This is one of the places that I'm desperate to go to in the coming years. India is sort of like on my radar as the next spot, and then the whole continent of Africa. I'm sure
Brilliant.
you guys are planning that next, but tell me about India. Did you see any tigers? Did you?
Yeah, I mean, it's we didn't see any tigers. The roads are tough.
Disappointing.
The roads are tough in India.
Tougher than China?
Much tougher. So in two ways. One is the infrastructure in India is not as good. So the quality of the asphalt, the quality of the concrete roads, how they're built, they're not as good. Just
Really?
flat out. And then the traffic is worse.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, so it's quite funny. When Colin and I did the Middle Kingdom ride in China in August and September and October 2010, at that time, China had the most dangerous roads in the world, like deaths per 100,000 drivers or something like that. And then when we did India in 2012, India had taken the crown over China as being the world's most dangerous roads.
Wow.
So here we are going out every day in India, and we were tackling, first of all, we were driving on the British side of the road, so on the wrong side for the North Americans out there.
Right.
And that was hard for me, easy for Colin, because Colin was living in London at the time. So I was struggling with that. And then you just had these crazy drivers, and they were worse than in China. And then coupled with the worse infrastructure, that it was really dangerous. And then, after a couple of weeks of this, it really started to wear you down. Like there were a lot of man tears on the India ride. Just 2-3 weeks of this building up in your system, and you just start shaking.
Wow.
And you cry and you get it out, and then the next day you wake up and you carry on. But you just had to get that out of your system.
Did you get that stuff on camera?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Well,
awesome.
yeah. I mean, some of the
That's really
footage
great.
that's on your YouTube channel. What's the YouTube
I only
channel?
saw China stuff. I didn't see India stuff.
No, there's India stuff on there too. It's G219. So if you do a YouTube search, it's just YouTube.com/productions G219.
Okay.
And that's our YouTube page, and you can go and see all our clips that we've prepared. There's a lot of stuff from India. There's a lot of stuff from the Middle Kingdom ride in China as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was showing me while you were taking your time getting over here.
Yeah.
He was showing us the I guess confessionals that you guys would do.
Yeah.
That are
That's
included in the footage. It's not just for the channel. This is actually part of that conflict. That's part of the structure of your storytelling.
Yeah.
That shows the obstacles that you guys had to endure.
Absolutely. That's one of the ways we do the filming. So one of our kind of style of these adventure shows is we go out and we do the adventures during the daytime, and then at night we do like a video diary. And we recap the day.
That's great.
And what we do is during that video diary, we spend some time talking about what we did that day and how we felt, and what we saw and how we feel about it. And then we also took some time to kind of reflect on the whole trip as a whole in general. And over the course of the trip, the attitude just starts falling, and the energy level just starts falling.
Your morale. And,
you really hit some low days, and there were some days where Colin and I just totally broke down when we were doing our video diaries, because you're just trying to kind of find the strength to carry on, and that didn't happen in China.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so you must have felt so confident having done China, and all right, like we got one under our belts, we got a world record. And then to find India that difficult must have been a huge blow to the confidence.
It was shocking. We knew India was going to be hard, but we just didn't realize, if you look at them, it's obvious. It's so obvious when it's staring in front of you. If you look on a map, China is 3 times bigger landmass-wise than India. but both countries have basically the same population, 1.3 billion people.
Outrageous.
So therefore, I'm no scientist, but therefore, India must be 3 times more crowded than China.
Yeah.
So now you think about China. You've been to Shanghai. You've been to Beijing. So think about how crowded those cities are. I live in Shanghai, 25 million people. Now imagine if Shanghai had 75 million people, 3 times more crowded. So you go to India, when we did our trip around China, 2/3 of China is empty.
Wow.
Yeah, really. Like all that Western bit and all the Tibetan bit, like it's really empty.
Yeah, Mongolia is like one of the least populated places on the planet.
Absolutely, yeah. And China has a province, Inner Mongolia, just below Mongolia, all grasslands, all empty. Wow. So the cities are big, and the cities all have like 5-10 million people. But where you're going in between cities, there's nothing. In India, there's people everywhere. You're up in the Himalayas, there's thousands of people everywhere. You're down along the coast, and there's people everywhere. And there was never a moment in India where you could just sit back and go, and just enjoy the view. It was a constant white knuckle ride, 10 hours a day.
Man, I have anxiety just thinking about it right now. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about the traffic jam that you documented. That was like a 4-hour traffic jam that went on for 100 kilometers?
Well, we found out later it went on for like 1,000 kilometers.
1,000 kilometers.
Which
Okay,
is like 600 miles.
Yeah, and people were in it for 3 weeks.
Some people we were talking to had been there for like 20 days.
Son of a bitch!
But
I'd shoot myself.
Shoot yourself.
I would shoot myself because we complain about LA traffic.
Yeah.
Holy mother of God!
Yeah, I was 15 minutes late, and I heard Colin say that in the London Reel. He was like, "Imagine being a month late to work."
Oh my!
Yeah, but it didn't seem to really bother anyone.
Yeah,
their time has a different value structure than what we give our time, and one of the great things about our show is the contrast of that day. So Colin and I, we slept in a yurt that night, which is a Mongolian kind of tent. And we were in this little Mongolian village, and we had some dinner. We had a lamb, went to bed, woke up the next morning. It was this beautiful green grassland, rolling green hills as far as the eye can see, nice. Wind turbines. It was just really pretty. And then we said, you know what, let's sleep in a little bit. We've only got like 100 kilometers to do. We'll leave at like 11 and roll in by 2 or 3. And then, we left those grasslands, and then we got back on the main highway, and that's when we encountered that traffic jam. And we went from being kind of so relaxed and just so generally chill to being so wound up, so tense, so frustrated by the traffic. Because what happened was all the traffic was going from west to east, and we were going from east to west. But the traffic was so bad that they started taking up both lanes.
Oh, shit.
So it was blocking all the westbound traffic. And we had 2 motorcycles and 1 SUV. And when you have an SUV with the cameraman in it, you can't just speed off because then you can't film. So we stayed with our car, which was even more frustrating because you can kind of bypass and get on the shoulder and just go. But we had to kind of stick back. And we ended up doing like 60 kilometers in about 5 hours to get through that traffic jam. But that traffic jam went in both directions. Like we just saw a little bit of it, but it was going in both directions for hundreds of miles.
Oh,
and then when we arrived at our hotel that night, after doing our, crazy, it was about 60 miles, about 100 kilometers. When we arrived that night, Colin and I were stuck behind trucks, and we were directing traffic and trying to get trucks back into their lane so we could get our SUV and the bikes through this lane. And at the end of that day, we just felt like we'd been run over by a truck.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like our jackets were black because of all the soot and stuff coming up from the trucks, and our faces were black, because we were getting all this exhaust in the face, and the sun was on us, and we got sunburned. And we went from being like euphorically happy and relaxed in the grasslands that morning to just wanting to rip all of our hair out, by mid-afternoon. And I hope that is like, as bad as that was, that's one of the fun, compelling parts of the show, is that, you're going like this and then like this and then maybe back like that on a daily basis. Your emotions are all over the place.
Great TV.
I hope
for sure.
I hope so.
No, definitely. I mean, those are the obstacles that are a necessity in telling a story, because if everything is gravy and you're happy-go-lucky all the time, well, that's boring, right?
I agree, yeah.
I mean, you want to see beauty, and you want to see the hero struggle to see that beauty and to taste it and to have it pulled out from under his legs,
Yeah.
So can you talk about those experiences within the Indian trip, or has that not been released yet? So you kind of want to save it?
No, I mean there was lots of issues in India that we ran into. I mean we would one day we were riding through Rajasthan and it was like 40 degrees Celsius, which is what, like 120 degrees Fahrenheit maybe, and it was hot. And then but it was kind of the monsoon season. It was just the end of the monsoon season. So we're riding there and it's just beyond hot. And then like after about 30 minutes, you'd hit this freak thunderstorm. And then it was like too dangerous to drive. The rain was coming down so hard. And it's a parched desert. And then we basically had to pull over, put on our rain suits, wipe off our stuff, and then get back on the bike. And then 10 more minutes, the rain had stopped, and it was 120 degrees Fahrenheit again. We had to take off our rain suits, put it back.
Wow.
And we were just doing this like all day long one day.
Then dealing with the mud that was created, right?
That's pretty unforgiving.
Yeah, so you just, and you kind of just take it with a smile. You're like, well, this is what we signed up for. This is what we're out for. And and then at one stage it was like just raining unbelievably hard. And I got a flat tire and we had to try to fix the flat tire in the rain, but we couldn't. So I kind of just pumped it up and we drove to the next.
Why didn't you just call AAA?
There was no AAA, no AAA, no insurance.
So wait, were you on the same bikes in India as well?
No. So for China, we used the BMW F800 GS.
Right.
And we had an issue with that because we did have a breakdown in Tibet. And it took us kind of 6-7 days to fix that breakdown because we had to order a part from outside of China and then smuggle it into China and then fix it. And that cost us kind of 7 days and it was a little bit expensive.
More good TV.
Good TV, hopefully. But in India, we wanted to use local Indian motorcycles because we thought that, as great as it is to break down, we were able to fix everything within one day. So we were able to get the bike to the town, find a mechanic. Spare parts were not a problem because they were Indian-made bikes. The guys knew how to fix them.
Nice.
Because Colin and I don't know shit. I mean, like, let me be honest with you. We don't know anything. Like, everyone was like, oh, you must be some kind of like crazy gearhead. And like, have you ever like made your own engine? And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Like, look at me for Christ's sake. I mean, I wore a suit to Real LA. So Real TV LA. So this is the thing, we just like the motorcycle. We just think it's cool to ride them. We think they're a great tool for exploration. It's fun. We don't know how to fix them. We don't know anything about the motorcycle. So anytime we had a breakdown, we just brought it to a mechanic. And that was fun because we got to hang out with the mechanic.
Right.
And of course, it's a family affair. So the kids were there working with the guy if they were off school or sometimes they weren't even in school. We always met the wife. So it was like our chance to really interact with people.
Wow.
And then, of course, when two white guys on bikes show up, then there's like the 50 people outside all looking in. Oh, what's happened to these guys? So it was a chance to really connect with people.
Yeah, you guys must have seemed like superstars. I mean,
yeah, people were surprised.
You got cameras on you. You're on motorcycles. It's you two, looking the way you do, coming into town, kind of like Butch and Sundance, man, just, riding in from the horizon and landing in town, man, attracting attention. And that just painted a really cool image.
Yeah, no, it was nice.
Colin mentioned that he thinks that India is 50 years behind China.
Yeah, I would.
Would you agree with that?
I would suggest it's near that. I usually
technologically?
No, infrastructure-wise.
Oh, okay.
So India, China is run by the Chinese government. There is some private industry, but most of the industry is run by the government.
Right.
So, and it's a one-party system, which means there's no real debate. So when they want to make a highway, they make a highway. When they want to make an airport, they make an airport.
No matter whose house that lands on.
Exactly.
It's true.
And that's the way things get done quickly. But they also get done really efficiently and effectively. When I first moved to Shanghai in 2001, we had 2 subway lines. Okay, now we have like 14.
Wow.
In Shanghai, carrying like 4 million people a day. So it's impressive. And that comes with cost. And that cost needs to be recognized and dealt with in a reasonable way. And they don't always do that. But at the same time, there is progress. India, the government really is hands-off with regards to infrastructure development, and they rely a lot on private sector funding to do the infrastructure development. And they seem to be in this like cat and mouse game, like who's going to invest first. And the Indian people are suffering.
Really?
Really, because this is not the way to, you're an emerging country, you're a BRIC country, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and you have to build roads. You have to have a high-speed train network. You have to have airports. You have to have ports. You have to have, waterways that people can ship things back and forth. You have to have, tens of thousands of trucks with refrigerator capabilities so you can ship goods all around the country. These are things that China has. You have to have a manufacturing sector. You have to have an educated workforce. You have to have hardworking people to build things. This is what you need. And India is just really far behind on this. Everyone compliments India for having a great, tech sector. And, they do a lot of tech outsourcing and call centers and these kinds of things. There's a lot of software engineering outsourcing
Exactly.
and this. And that's a lot in Bangalore. And we visited Bangalore. And Bangalore is a great town. But the infrastructure in Bangalore is really, really bleak as well. And
Wow.
and you're surprised because when you meet an Indian person, they're brilliant. They're well educated. They're well read. They know what the problems are in their country. But there seems to be just no willpower to force their government, the people in government to do things, or if they are being forced, they're not listening or just not being active. I don't know how that, I haven't spent, when I did my trip in China, I knew China.
Right.
I know China. I live there. I feel China. When I did my trip in India, I had more questions when I finished than when I started.
Wow.
Like, why doesn't this work?
Yeah.
It should work. All the Indian people I meet, they're so smart. They're so well read. They know what the problems are. If everyone knows what the problem is, how come they can't figure? And I couldn't figure it out. And in China, it's the same thing. You meet people, they're switched on, they're hardworking, they're ambitious, and you can see it. Things get done.
Yeah.
So
you really think it's the disconnect between what the government is doing and what the people want? Doesn't the government know that everybody knows what the issue is?
But as long as they keep getting elected, I think they're just going to do as little as possible.
Is it very corrupt?
I think democracies are just as corrupt as communist governments. I think it's
Right.
all. I think politics in general is soulless in many ways.
Yeah, yeah.
And people will do as little as possible to get reelected, and people in power. What's the famous quote? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone in power is probably doing something that's not so great, and whether you find out about it or not is the will of the media.
So what was the big lesson from the India trip? Or lessons?
Just that, to be humble, because I think we did go into India feeling quite good, and we did China, and even though we hadn't sold our China trip, we felt like we made a good show, and people are starting to realize that now that it's being played. It broadcast it debuted on April the 10th in the UK on Travel Channel International.
Is
Nice.
that's considered season 2?
The India ride will be season 2, yeah. So it'll be another 6 episode, and I think the real key is just go into every project like it's brand new and like you don't know anything.
And how you can innovate it and take something from it that you didn't intend. That's the dream.
That is the
have
dream,
it,
right? It's to do every project like it's your first and be totally absorbed by it and learn everything you can from it, and then be inspired by that process.
Yeah. So you're a filmmaker now.
Television maker, producer,
Yeah,
presenter.
man. That's. To come from where you came from, you were just a basketball player in Toronto.
just a baller who couldn't jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had lots of jokes about that too, so it was quite tough.
But and big up, because it's not easy to get onto a squad.
No, not at
at
all.
the collegiate level. So you were obviously doing something
It
right.
cost me a lot of money to get that spot on
Yeah,
the show.
right.
Sure.
It was fun. It was nice.
Yeah. To living in China,
Yeah.
exploiting your creative skills as a photographer,
Right.
then it branched out to making movies, documentaries, and TV shows
And
that
books.
you're
And books,
selling.
yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about. That's where I'm leading, is the Sacred Mountain, because I was blown away by those pictures, man.
Okay.
Thank you for showing that to me, man.
No worries.
I don't
you
even
haven't
know what
you
that
haven't
is.
seen
No.
it yet, but it's his next project. It's
Yeah.
one of his many projects. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So obviously we did the Middle Kingdom ride and the India ride, and I did that with my brother. We co-created it and co-produced it, and now I'm very excited to start making more television about China, and I feel like these projects are going to be real passion projects for me because I live there and I want to show people more of what I get to see on a daily basis. So I created this idea, and I'll be doing it on my own without my brother because he's in London and he's very busy these days. And so I'm going to go off into these really remote parts of China. And China's very unique because they have these 4 sacred mountains. and they're all 25,000 feet above sea level.
Damn.
Huge peaks. But what's important to them is that they're very special to the local community, and to the people of that region. And what they do is they walk around the base of the mountain, and it's called a kora, Kora, and it's like a sacred kora. And when I say walk around the base, it's not flat. It's 10,000 feet, 15,000 feet, 18,000 feet, 10,000 feet.
How often are they walking this base?
Well, each mountain has a route around it that takes like 10 to 14 days, and it's basically like 150 to 200 miles of walking. It's a trek. It's a holy trek. It's a way of kind of understanding yourself and reaching purity, and it's very much about spirituality.
Nature, right?
Just like a pilgrimage where the end is the beginning.
Right, and it's a full circumnavigation of each mountain, and I have done some of these in the past as a photographer and made photo stories about them. And it's a passion of mine to always go hiking in these parts of the world when I have free time. And I've taken my daughter with me up into the Himalayas once, which was a great experience. So we got to share that together. And it's something I wanna bring a television audience to do. So we've got 4 mountains: one in Qinghai, one in Sichuan, one in Yunnan, and one in Tibet proper, where I'll be doing like a full circumnavigation. And the concept behind the show is that I'm going to be leading an audience through these experiences. So why is the mountain important? Why is the route important? Why is it important to the local people? Does it have something to do with Buddhism? Does it have something to do with nature? Is it entrenched in environmentalism? What makes these places stand out? Why is this route so well worn? And then also investigating the local people who live around the mountain, because not only will I have to sleep in tents for most of the trip, but we will have interaction in villages along the way, and get the stories from the people about what it's like living near this mountain and why it's so important. And again, this constant idea of wanting to show people a different side of China, and people don't know these places exist. And again, we don't have a broadcaster, and we're producing independently.
Just doing what you do best.
Yeah, just doing what I do best. And it's kind of on me. I have to make a compelling story, and people have to want to follow me.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then it'll be a failure. But if I can bring people through this journey, and instill my passion in the place, and share that with them, then hopefully there will be an audience for it.
How would you describe your own spirituality at this point, and how much is it informed by your experience with Buddhism and
Islam? I'm completely atheist.
Okay.
Like I grew up, I went to a Catholic school, and I grew up, and then I started traveling through Central Asia and China, and I was introduced to Taoism and Buddhism and the Muslim Islam and the Muslim culture. And I believe there's brilliant parts of every religion that you can learn something from. So as much as I don't believe in anything, I'm a spiritual person. I feel connected to the earth. I love environmentalism, and I think that part of this trip, around these sacred mountains, will be a great way to reconnect with nature. Because I live in a city of 25 million people, and some days that bugs me out.
Yeah, for real.
Just like you guys in LA, and how great is it to just walk for 200 miles in the mountains, with nothing but a tent and a donkey to carry your food and your tent.
And a camera.
So that's really
pretty
it.
Great.
And again, it goes back to, my first trip to China is about having that alone time. It's about having that time to think and ask questions and reflect. And that's going to come out as well, because you are going to be really, no mobile phone access, no email, no nothing for 2-3 weeks at a time during these filming stints.
Talk about a circumnavigation. I mean, that's where the story started.
Exactly.
You're walking around China again.
Exactly. Yeah, just in different ways. And it's going to be great. And I hope that people can take whatever they want from it, whether it's a personal adventure where they get to see me suffer. There will be that.
That's why I'm watching.
Yeah, exactly.
You might solicit somebody's help. This guy looks really interested in that. Yeah. He would go.
I would be your Sherpa in like 2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
Yeah, look at those arms, man. He could carry bags, dude.
I'd be like, Brian, what do I have to do to go to the mountain trip where we walk around the base of the mountain? It's really brilliant. Appealing. I think that's really great. So is that planned for when you go back in the fall?
No, I start in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm in LA now for this week, and then I fly back to China, and then I start on July 4th. Or July 5th. Friday, July 5th, we fly out. And, got all the gear at home, and we're all ready to go, and I just say goodbye to my wife, and then head out into the mountains.
So how does that work on the family end? Has she not said yet at this point, like, dude, when do I get to go?
You know, I have to tell you that, you know, behind every great adventure is a man who's a little bit mentally not right.
Right.
And that's me. And then there's a really strong woman. And I think that my wife's amazing. And, you know, not only did she marry a photographer, which is always bad news.
It's like marrying a musician.
Yeah, it's like struggling artist. But, you know, she really loved, you know, seeing me go out and come back with these amazing pictures. My wife's Chinese. She's from Shanghai. So she got empowered by the idea that I was trying to show people what China looked like. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, there's nothing kind of censored or editorialized, you know, with the work. Pictures don't lie. And you know, she really supported that. And the motorcycle trip was a bit tough.
Right.
The first one, the one around China was a bit tough because she didn't really know if it was a joyride or not. Like, are you just having a vacation with your brother?
Exactly.
And are you just spending a lot of money making a film about it so you guys can put it on YouTube? So so there was a bit of concern about that. But then once she saw that it, you know, is a business, and that you can actually, there's people who want to buy your book and read it, and who can be inspired by that, and maybe want to come to China, maybe want to do something in their home country or in their home county. You know, that's empowering, that's exciting. And she was fully supportive of the India trip and really loves this idea that now people can watch what I do on a DVD or on, you know, iTunes download or on television, and see something that they wouldn't otherwise see. Because I really feel like the television genre in general has left behind adventure. Right. And I feel like this is my niche that I want to try to bring back. And I may not be successful, but I feel like, you know, I want to see people go out and explore things and have first experiences. And I feel like that's really being let down. There's a lot of reality TV shows. There's a lot of competitions. There's a lot of nastiness. You know, we all know that rates well.
Right.
And we all know that, you know, advertisers love it, and, you know, that's all working. But where's the show that's going to inspire kids to get out of the city and do something? Where's the show that's going to show people that, oh, on my next vacation, you know, instead of going to a 5-star resort and drinking and sitting by a pool, why don't I get out and try to do something like this guy? Like, where's the show that motivates people like that? And I hope that people can see a little bit of what I'm doing and just try to live a mildly more adventurous life. You don't have to do a motorcycle trip around China. You can take a long weekend with the boys, or you know, you go out with the wife, or do anything, but just live a little bit more outside the box.
Well, yeah, that's
shit's inspiring, man.
Well, comedies back in when acting first started getting introduced to the masses as an art form,
right,
not just as a prayer, but tragedies or comedies were rooted in tragedy because what you saw made you happy that you didn't have to go through that tragedy. Right. So if what you did was raise the bar so high that you say, well, I don't have to go to that extreme.
Right.
Because I see how hard it is. I see what I'm going to, I could do a weekend camping trip with the boys to unify and to kind of bring together, man. That's, I mean, if that's your intention and those are the people you want to touch, man, I think you're wildly successful already.
Right. Well said.
So don't, you know, whether you succeed or not, I mean, if you want to put a dollar sign next to it, you go right ahead. But I mean, in my eyes, and I'm sure in Thomas's, you're successful.
I feel like you must have a ton of ideas stewing in that gourd of yours. So are there any plans for the African continent? Have you thought, like, this is what I want to conquer next, or South America?
Season 3, man.
The motorcycle trips are percolating. There's some ideas. You know, Colin and I,
different bike in every continent. Dude, that's exciting, man.
It could be okay. You know, I think Colin and I have to find the time again, and that's getting more difficult. The more productions I do on my own, and the more Colin gets his life back. You know, when Colin did the Middle Kingdom ride, you know, after that he had a gap year, and then he did his MBA in London. He did a Master's of Business in London, and then when he finished his Master's in Business, then we did the India ride. So we've taken natural gaps in his life, in Colin's life, and scheduled these events.
Right.
And now he's working, and he you know, he's got a wife, and he's thinking about maybe having a family, and and whether he's going to have 60 days to fart around a tough country with me, just going out for a ride.
60 days to get his ass kicked.
Yeah, so it's these are things we have to think about, but countries that jump out at me: Russia, Indonesia,
Yeah, man.
South African states. Why not the United States? I've already thought of a few trails in the United States that people haven't seen, and what a great way to explore the United States by doing these really remote kind of places in the U.S. where maybe people don't get to see.
I would watch it
through the eyes of a Canadian.
Yeah, of all things, right?
Neighbors to the north, man. I mean, it's a different perspective. Plus, the bonds that you've already forged with broadcasters and foreign market sales and all that stuff. I mean, maybe people in the U.S. won't be as interested as the rest of the world.
The rest of the world will.
Yeah,
absolutely.
How did you get into? How are you already broadcast in 100 countries?
So the Travel Channel International, has this footprint that basically broadcasts all around the world.
Massive.
It is, yeah. I think that we've already aired in parts of South America, parts of Africa, Southern Africa, all through Asia, all through Europe. So they have.
It's really exciting.
It is exciting, yeah, and it's good. And the great thing is that Travel Channel will keep showing it again and again and again, and people who missed it can see it again. And we're coming out with the DVD soon, and we'll reach those people who are looking for more video on demand. And we have an iTunes product coming soon. And
very nice.
There's all this stuff kind of about to roll out as a way of kind of connecting with more people, because if you can't sit down in front of your TV from 8 o'clock on a Wednesday for an hour, we don't want you to not see our show.
Yeah,
we want you to see our show when you can see our show. So, this whole digital download movement is really catching on.
Absolutely. What kind of juiciness am I going to get in the book as opposed to the show?
Brilliant segue into the book. So, this is the thing, you have an experience for 60 days. And it tears you apart and puts you back together again, and then tears you apart again and puts. But on television, you can only show so much. The television show is 6 episodes of our best film footage put together as a story.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the exact story. And you can imagine that 6 30-minute episodes, that's 3 hours. We're on the road for 65 days.
Yeah, right.
So
that must have been tough.
Think about how much ended up on the cutting room floor. We probably could have made 10 episodes or 20 episodes if people really wanted to watch us.
Were you privy to that editing process?
Yeah,
Did
of
you get
course,
to sit
of
on
course.
that? Okay.
So that was, but we really wanted to make a fast-paced, snappy, aggressive television show where there weren't any real lulls. We wanted to bring people on a fast, exciting journey.
Yeah, you got to be true to that formula because it's been tried and tested, and it's
been perfected at this point.
For sure.
But the book is totally different. It's a completely different story. It's a completely different process. It's about hopes and fears. It's about frustrations. It's about the low points. It's about hitting rock bottom, picking yourself back up again. Man. It's about the difficulties with the families, the difficulties about starting the journey and organizing it, and then kind of what we learned at the end. And not all of that comes out in the television series as well as it does in the book. So the book is really like a more of a consciousness of the journey.
And
that's exciting.
Through your eyes.
Through Colin and our eyes. We co-wrote the book.
Okay,
yeah.
co-wrote and self-published?
We self-published, yeah. So again, we approached publishers about our book, and we set a Guinness World Record. We rode a motorcycle around China. We've got a story to tell. There's going to be a television show. Would you like to publish our book? And people said no. So we said, well, we have a story, and we're not going to let anyone stop us from sharing it. So we wrote a book ourselves. We hired a freelance editor to kind of rip it apart and help us put it back together, because we can write, but we're not writers. We're not authors.
Sure.
We don't have great prose. We're not inspiring people with our words, but we have a story to tell. So we had someone help us put it all together, and we put it all together. And then there's tools available now to self-publish. All you need to do is have a decent copy, a printer, and then someone to put it on Amazon for you. Or you can put it on Amazon yourself. And through that, you can reach lots of people.
Yeah.
So why would you ever let not getting accepted by a publisher stop you from sharing anything?
I will have to agree with that wholeheartedly. I did the exact same thing with my book.
Nice.
And I initially made it on iBooks.
Okay.
iBooks Author, which I don't know how old that software is, but you can put together a really nice looking ebook,
right,
which then can be downloaded, like mine is free on iTunes for iPad. If you have an iPad, you can download my book. It looks beautiful.
What's the name of it?
Useful Things.
Okay.
Useful Things. and then I put it up on Amazon. Won't let you put it up indefinitely for free if it's on another site.
Right.
So it's like $3 my
Okay.
book, but I wanted to do the same thing, and I didn't even pitch to publishers because
Yeah.
I went down that road about 9 years ago with a piece of work of fiction. And I just, getting the literary agent and writing the query letter and then
Yeah.
sending the first 3 chapters and then the whole manuscript. I was like, fuck it, I'll just make it for free.
Yeah.
It's great. So congratulations on that. You
Thank
guys
you.
just do whatever you want.
Yeah, man, that's the thing, and that kind of fuels my next question about possibly doing like narrative. Any kind of aspiration towards that? I mean, I know if I had the amount of time that you have on these trips,
Mm-hmm.
it would be inspired to, what about this idea and putting this story together, and God, I better write down this dialogue. I just saw this. I was watching these 2 guys have a conversation. Like, I could write a scene from that or something. I mean, you obviously could do a lot. I mean,
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's being talked about. Like, we're looking at doing other kinds of productions in China, and there's people who have seen what we've done already, and there's opportunities that exist. Maybe
People are starting to notice.
Yeah, slowly, and it
That's
takes
great.
it takes time. People always underestimate the long term and overestimate the short term.
Tim Ferriss does
Yeah.
the same thing.
And everyone thinks that they're gonna get everything they want within 18 months. And it's
true.
absurd. I don't know what it is about our society, but we live in this fast-paced society, which is great. But at the same time, people expect fast results, and that doesn't happen. You have to really prove yourself, and it takes time. And it's not going to be 1 production or 3 productions. It might be 5 productions, and then
Right.
finally someone will say, actually, what this guy is doing is quite interesting, and he's doing it by himself. So why don't we help him out and take him to a new level?
Well,
and
absolutely.
maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But either way, I'm loving the journey, and I think that's the thing. If you're not loving the process, then you're not true to what you're kind of believing in.
yeah, no, I mean, the fact that you're proving that you can do what you do
Right.
at X amount of dollars that can be very easily monetized to a conglomerate or a broadcaster or whomever is in charge of taking it to that next level. I mean, that's really what it's about. I feel in this new media age,
Right.
where you're capable of doing so much with so little. You had a thought jump into your head about China. You didn't just find a dream to follow. You found your wife.
Yeah. Right,
That
yeah.
to me says leaps and bounds about what we're all about, and that's living the dream. Taking it to that place where you're expanding upon what you intended.
Yeah.
It just is really cool and uber inspiring. I was talking to you about
Yeah.
how excited I was to sit in front of you and really explore and see the pictures that you paint with your words, man. And I think you're at a point now where you're creating content, and content is king.
It is. Yeah. You have to believe that.
Above all, you're living life on your own terms, which
Mm-hmm.
is pretty much thematically consistent with all of our guests.
Right.
So what would you give advice-wise? How would you counsel someone who wants to be able to do just that?
I think that never let failure stop you. And I think that, if you haven't failed 10 times at something, you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
I mean, people get, it's hard. You put your life into something. You put your heart and soul into something. You stay awake at nights crying because you don't know if it's going to be good enough. Like, we have that self-doubt in us all.
Yeah.
But if you let one person say no and then you walk away from your dream, you're doing yourself no justice. And I just believe that you have to wake up every day ready to fight. And, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have said this, and it doesn't matter whether you're a filmmaker or, a telecoms, conglomerate, CEO, or you're making cars or whatever. Like, every day is going to be a fight. Then you have to have the stomach for that.
Yeah.
And you got to wake up and fight the good fight in order to get what you want. And if you're not going to wake up every morning and fight and spread your name and do your marketing and build your stories and then execute them, someone else will.
Right.
And that person's going to take what you want.
Yeah.
And I think that has to be what motivates you. And having, 5 or 10 people tell you no isn't good enough to give that dream up.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, law of averages.
Yeah,
9 out of those 10 people are going to say no.
absolutely.
90 of those 100 are going to say no.
Exactly.
So man, I'm like, I want to keep going.
Yeah, I know.
But we're going to run out of battery.
We have to wrap it up. But,
Yeah. Can you
wow.
drop some of the websites that you want people to follow? I know the world has changed since 2001, and you said you were doing email blogs, but are you doing a blog?
No, I don't.
besides-
I don't do a blog anymore. So what we have is for people who want to follow the Middle Kingdom ride, which is the China motorcycle trip, the Guinness World record-setting motorcycle trip. That was www.mkride.com. Okay. And then for people who want to follow the India ride, it's www.theindiaride.com. And then for my new Sacred Mountains project, where I'm going to be doing the hiking in the Himalayas, that's www.sacredmountains.tv.
Okay.
And that's where people can find. And then, of course, people can find my own website, which is just ryanpyle.com. And I have a Facebook page, and I'm constantly updating it with where I am and who I'm meeting and what I'm doing. And I'm obviously going to have something from us tonight.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you have a lot of you have a huge Twitter following, don't you?
Twitter following, Facebook following. We got a couple. I think Twitter's like 35,000, so it's not bad. Facebook, I've got like 100 and.
Don't even look at our Twitter page.
Facebook's good. I've got like over 100,000 Facebook followers, which are great, and everyone's really interactive. But the real thing is in China, people are really starting to follow me.
Wow.
So I've got this. They have this Weibo, which is like a Chinese Twitter account, and I've got like over 100,000 Weibo followers. So
we need to get a Weibo.
Are you posting in Mandarin though?
I am posting in Mandarin. So
would
I'm taking
help us quite a bit.
I'm taking it's Google Translate. I hate to pimp out Google, but you just they own everything. They do everything
exactly.
so well.
It's fine.
They're just so great. I watched The Internship. I just want to be like Vince Vaughn. So you post in English on your Facebook page or whatever, and then you just translate that and then put it up on the Weibo page in Chinese and get people excited about watching your content. And Chinese people have now figured out that there's a crazy Canadian guy living in Shanghai exploring more of their country than they are.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I go around and do a lot of university talks all around China and try to inspire young Chinese people to go out and see their own country and to just kind of think about that. It might not be for you, but just know that there's a lot of different ways to live your life. And the way people are living around you, or the stresses that people have around you, aren't necessarily the only ways of doing things, and thinking outside the box and trying to, China's a very conservative society, and a lot of young people, they feel really pressured at a young age, whether they're doing their, school exams, which are standard, mandatory, the Gaotao, and then whether they're getting through university, and then they have to get a job, and then there's marital pressure and all kinds of stuff. And that's not for everyone, and it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of young kids that want to travel and see the world before they settle down, and sometimes that can be frowned upon. So I try to go and just share what I do and who I am, and if it inspires you, it inspires you, and if it doesn't, then you learn something new tonight maybe, and then you can go on.
Well, dude, it's inspired me, man. This has been an incredible hour and a half, and I wish we could keep going, because I feel like we could talk for many hours to you.
Yeah, well, you kept feeding me coffee. So
Yeah.
I don't know what I think you guys did it on purpose.
Hey, man.
Go till midnight.
We'd love to have you back next time you have something to share with us.
Just come back.
terms
Yeah,
of
Just
we're
come
Sacred
back,
Mountains,
hang
dude.
out. We'll do the next one topless.
Yeah, well,
You could be topless.
I don't know. This guy might get excited. He makes a living topless.
Okay.
But Ryan,
I don't know where that's going.
Ryan, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your time and the stories you shared, man. Truly inspiring, not just as a filmmaker, but as a human being, man. You're really doing it, and I think you should be very proud that you're living the dream, man.
Thank you very much.
You are living the dream. Thank you, and come back soon.
We will. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thank you, bud.
Cheers.